All right, everybody. Well, welcome to tonight's event, Leverage Tech Career to Support Your Art. My name is Brian Banville, and I am the Career Services Manager at Learn Academy, and I will be leading today's workshop. Before we begin, I want to mention just a little code of conduct going forward here for this Zoom workshop. We consider this a brave space. What that means is that we want to empower you to feel safe and included throughout this time we are learning together. That means being respectful, patient, and encouraging to one another, and know that you can ask questions at any time in the chat. TJ, who is our Director of Marketing and PR, is on the chat function. Some of our instructors are as well, so they can answer some of your questions there, as well as kind of stop me mid-sentence to have your question answered. I will say that purposeful trolling or general bad behavior won't get you very far. In fact, it will get you about as far as us, unfortunately, having to eject you from the workshop. In other words, please be excellent to each other. So let's dive into tonight's event. So why are we all here? As you guys all know, as a result of COVID-19, one of the major industries that's been hit is the entertainment industry. And it's currently hanging in the balance of kind of awaiting when will be a full-scale return of that industry in particular. There are small pieces of it that are starting to come back, which is excellent, but there's still a lot of uncertainty. And so part of today is to share with you guys how a tech career or a career in tech can help to benefit your artistic career as well. And we're going to share a little bit about how to go about doing that. So you'll leave here today with some free resources and tools, as well as some additional information for those who are interested. And it will be a really, really great time for you to check in on some of the skills that we'll be talking about today. Now, one of the things that a tech career can help for those who are artists is it provides a lot of flexibility. The great thing about tech careers is that a majority of developers are able to do it relatively on a flexible schedule. A lot of companies, if you're working a 9 to 5 as a web developer, they have something called core hours, which are typically between the hours of 10 and 2. And typically you just have to be on for those hours, and then the other hours of the day are a lot more flexible. In addition to that, there is a lot of really great freelance or remote opportunities as a developer as well that gives you some really, really great options for flexibility. In addition, we've also seen that remote work has been making a gigantic increase, partially because of COVID-19. But prior to that, back in 2017, over a 10-year period, we actually saw from 2007 to 2017 a 91% growth rate of remote-based jobs, with the majority of them happening through the tech industry. The other cool thing that development or coding can do for you is create a relatively lucrative secondary career. We're going to talk a little bit about what I mean by that. I've also put in parentheses here a survival job. But the great thing about developers versus your typical survival job, for a lot of people who are in the entertainment industry, we're very much used to a gig-based environment. And so as a result, many of us have to have a second source of income. And what's really great about developers is that here in San Diego, a full-time developer that's entry level, the median salary range is $45,000 to $65,000. Then after a year on the market, that actually increases to a median average of $75,000 to $90,000 a year, which is awesome. In addition to that, for those who are doing more of the freelance work, anyone who has roughly about a year of experience can make anywhere from $30 to $60 an hour. That's compared to the entertainment industry numbers, which range from $19 to maybe $36 an hour. So it's a really good opportunity to create some financial security for yourself on the side while you're continuing to kind of pursue a career as an artist or in the entertainment industry. My favorite is that it definitely creates this awesome creative outlet for yourself. When I introduce myself a little bit more, I'll share with you all that I am also an actor. And I know that one of the big things that I have been missing from this shelter in place and with COVID-19 is the kind of the lack of creating in the room, collaborating with others in the room. And I'm very fortunate for my job here at Learn Academy that allows for me to have a creative outlet and get to also share with our students the opportunity to continue to build that creative outlet as well. So it helps to keep those juices flowing. Programming also can help you gain some valuable transferable skills that you can use directly in the entertainment industry. More and more, we're actually starting to see that people in industries that have additional skills, such as coding or programming skills, are actually more likely to get hired in their respective industries because of those additional skill sets. We've also seen a trend in K through 12 that coding and programming are starting to be integrated into the regular curriculum. And although that's going to take a long period of time, we're actually going to see a lot of people leaving high school with basic understanding of programming and coding languages, because they're really going to start to become and infiltrate a lot of different parts of various industries. We're already starting to see it now in the entertainment industry in particular, especially within film, where there's a lot of programming that needs to go on with film, and whether that's kind of on the creative design side of film or even on the front end, most films are going to need some sort of marketing website of some kind. And so if you can be, say, a video op one and bring the experience of being able to also code and offer to build out the website for this film that you're working on, you're more likely to get hired because they're getting more bang for their buck, which is awesome. And then the other really great thing that I love about coding and developing that I think is really beneficial for people in the arts and the entertainment industry is it allows for you to develop resources to not only market yourself, but also to market others. So as you can see here, a lot of films, a lot of musicians, they all have actors, designers, have their portfolio, if you will, on websites. And usually they have to go out and either use maybe like a Wix or a WordPress or something like that, where there's a lot of restrictions and it can cost a lot of money. And so for those who get to gain those skills, not only do they get to control their own resources of how they're marketing themselves, but they can start to also offer out these resources to others, which is a really a great additional benefit as well. So tonight we're going to share with all of you how you can be what I like to call a dual careerist, which I'll talk a little bit about. So as I mentioned, my name is Brian Banville. I'm the Career Services Manager at Learn Academy. For those of you who have not been introduced to Learn Academy, we are a full stack web development bootcamp. Full stack means that we teach both the front end, which is what you see on a website, so the actual design that you're seeing, and then we also teach the back end, which is something that helps to make the front end run correctly. So we teach both of those, focusing mostly on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and another programming language called Ruby, which is one of the most beneficial languages to learn web development on from scratch, because you really start to understand web development if you've never been introduced to it before, utilizing the Ruby language. It's a really great language to learn. And what's really great is we help to support our students in learning how to not only build full-scale and functioning websites, but also web applications and different components and features on websites that you may have seen before. Like we've had people create shopping e-commerce sites. We've had people who have created forms. If you've ever seen that contact section at the bottom of a website with a fillable form, those types of things as well. And it's something that they have full control over, which is really awesome. And then more importantly, we really help to establish a really great relationship within the San Diego tech community and beyond, so that those who come through our program actually have a jump start into getting contacts and finding those first positions, which can sometimes be the most difficult to secure. And so we have a lot of really great things set up, which I'll talk a little bit more about towards the in just a little bit. Now, in addition, I'm also a professional stage actor who's based in San Diego and a proud member of Actors Equity Association. And the interesting thing is I actually became an artist completely haphazardly. And so I had my profession before, and I worked in the nonprofit sector in education, was a statewide trainer in California. And what's actually interesting is that I was working for a nonprofit and barely making enough to live. And so I thought about the other skills that I had. I had been a singer and performed in an a cappella group in college and thought, well, maybe you can get paid to sing. So I auditioned for a lot of bands in San Diego, but unfortunately ska and emo and punk are not really my vocal style, we'll say. And so I started to rack my brain on how I could get more involved, and fell on theater. Uh, and said, I'm going to make some extra money. I'm going to become an actor and make some extra money so I can live. So I had the reverse track, which is I was not making enough in my day job, and got into acting to make money, which I'm probably the only actor to ever say that. So, but what's interesting is becoming a part of the industry. What I learned first and foremost is the importance of continuing to learn and to build skills. It's something that all people of the entertainment industry are encouraged to do. And I'm actually even doing that during this down period as well, where there isn't as much work for a professional stage actor right now. And so I'm actually going back to school to get a master's degree in instructional design and technology, which is going to help my other career. And so I am a gigantic advocate of having what I call being a dual careerist, finding the balance in being able to have both financial security as well as getting to have art, create, and collaborate with others. I do it on stage. Other people on the call that you'll hear from today do it with film, do it with sound. And so you'll hear from some of them as well today. But I think it's this really, really great opportunity. And what I like to do is try to find similarities between the two different careers. So that's actually where we're going to start our conversation tonight. So I'm going to give a very brief introduction to coding and development, just for those of you on the call who might not know fully everything that we're talking about, just so we're all on the same page. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the skills that directly transfer from the entertainment industry, or being an artist. We'll also assess the skills needed to become a web developer, provide some resources, and then we have a really great panel of coding artists. So these are developers and programmers who are also artists, and I'm really excited to have them on the call today. And then we'll have time for questions at the end, but as we mentioned before, feel free to ask questions throughout. So, what is coding? For those of you who don't know it, in very simple terms, coding or programming is the process of creating instructions for computers to perform specific actions. I kind of like to think of it like baking a cake rather than kind of cooking a meal. Baking has a little bit more science to it, a little bit more specific. If you don't follow the instructions, you tend to get really flat cookies or stuff like that. And so part of it is that. I also kind of like to think of it as really specific stage directions in a script. This is The Sunshine Boys, which is a show that I did last fall by Neil Simon, who is known for having very specific stage instructions, because he in particular wants to make sure that he is having the actors do exactly what he wants on stage. And so he gives these specific instructions. It's very similar what coding and programmers do, is that they actually will create these specific instructions to make sure that they get the actions to happen that they want the computers to do. And so there's actually some interesting correlation there. Now, more importantly, it's important that we all view coding as an art form as well. So although it can kind of appear very analytical in thinking, a lot of people think that they need to be like brilliant mathematicians to be coders in programs. It really is actually more about the creativity and the problem solving that you bring. And many programmers actually have a background in film, dance, theater, music, photography, and even other art forms like pottery. Coding in particular is an art which allows you to create, share, and tap into a new creative and collaborative outlet. Now, there is a really great quote, actually, by a famous developer. His name is John Romero. Those of you who are on the call may know him as he's a creator, director, and programmer, in particular with video game development. For those of you who existed in the 80s, he is responsible for Doom, Doom 2, and Quake. So for those of you who know those games, John Romero is quite famous for that. But what he says is, you might not think that programmers are artists, but programming is an extremely creative profession. It's a logic-based creativity. That is, coders, like artists, start with nothing and pull something into existence using their skill and creativity. And there is so much creativity that goes into software development, and particularly in how it's related to how we solve problems in the programming and developer space. Sometimes we just try to find the quickest solution, but that can feel a little bit more mechanical and less creative. So what we strongly encourage our students to do is to really take a step back, analyze the problem prior to solving it. And then what that does is actually starts to create things that are a little bit more interesting, very similar to people in theater, people in film who are telling stories. An additional software engineer whose name is Ron Berkey actually compares coders to storytellers. So Ron Berkey is a software engineer who demonstrated the ability for coders to be these storytellers. He's most famous for something in the developer world called the Apollo Guidance Computer Project, which is he modernized the Apollo 13 guidance systems, utilizing modern computers and modern programming languages. And he did it after taking inspiration from watching Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks with his son. And he really wanted to bring that into the present day. Ron Berkey says that engineering design is a creative activity much more similar to art than any non-engineer gives it credit for. He points out that coders, very similar to writers, create what we call a wireframe or an outline for what they're going to create, and then they go about creating it. Very similar to how a writer will outline their entire story and then start to fill in the gaps. In addition, he also shares, for programmers, any solution to a problem is the result of a very individual set of choices. The creativity comes from imagining what different choices you might make and figuring out which are the most compelling. And what's the most interesting that Ron Berkey brings is that something that is unique or very similar, I guess we could say, to the entertainment industry is that each programmer and developer is going to bring their own unique problem solving and approach to every single problem. Very similar to how an actor will bring their own to every single character that they are creating on stage, even if someone has created it before. And so it's something that really kind of starts to tie these two things together. So now that we kind of can see some of those connections between the entertainment industry and the tech industry as a developer and coder, let's take a look at some of the most transferable skills from the entertainment industry. So here is a list of some of the top transferable skills from the entertainment industry. From this list, you may notice that a lot of these listed skills are actually quite multidimensional and require a lot of hands-on experience to build, which is something that in the entertainment industry is very important. You can study acting all you want, but until you try to be an actor, you have no idea if you'll be a good one. Until you can study filmmaking until you're blue in the face, but until you go out and try to create your own first film, we never really know how that's going to shake out. And so some of the ones that stand out to me in particular is learning new skills. This is something that we all can relate to from the entertainment industry, is that constant need to learn new skills. So whether you're a performer, a designer, or a technician, we are constantly being challenged and told that we need to continue to learn. We need to go and move from now being a triple threat to a quadruple threat, because now everyone is required to play a musical instrument, for example. I still have not mastered that one. But one of my favorite things that I did as an actor learning a new skill is I remember I was doing a show and the director called me about a week before the show started and said, hey, Brian, quick question for you. You tap dance, right? And I said, no, I certainly do not tap dance. And he goes, oh, well, I need you to learn because we need you to tap dance for the show. We had 4 weeks of rehearsal. I had never put a pair of tap shoes on in my entire life. And the tap was a very integral part of the show. It was a show called On the 20th Century. Craig and Drew, who are on tonight's call, were actually a part of that show with me. And I had to learn how to tap dance super quick. And not only learn to tap dance, but also look as good as Drew on the call, who had been tapping a little bit longer than I had. Drew also learned unexpectedly. And also our dance captain, Luke, was probably the best tapper. He's probably the best tapper in San Diego, and I had to tap right next to him. And I will say that the benefit is that when people came and saw the show, they were like, oh, wow, like I never knew that you could tap dance. And I was like, ha, I can't really tap dance. But it's that process of having to learn new skills is something that programmers and coders as an industry, they thrive on lifelong learning. And so that's definitely one of those transferable skills, is being able to not only learn new skills, pick them up quickly, but also implement them pretty quickly, because technology is forever changing. And so this is something that I think the entertainment industry as a skill brings in particular to the tech industry. Another thing that we do as entertainers is we are really good at advocating for our work. This is something, because we're in that gig-oriented market, we're always looking for that next job, that next gig. And so we constantly have to be showing off our work, but not only showing it off, also kind of proving that we can do it. That can lead from things like interviews or auditions or design forums, film festivals. All those types of things are kind of pushing us forward. And this really requires a great deal of determination, which is something that is also really important for being a developer. As I shared before, programmers are all unique in how they solve problems, and constantly have to provide readable code to back up their work and their ideas, but also share those ideas out loud and advocate for their solution to the problem. And so this is another really, really great, unique thing that the entertainment industry has as a really great transferable skill into being a programmer and developer. And then, of course, one of the most exciting ones is creative problem solving. It is absolutely the #1 transferable skill for anyone interested in moving into the tech industry, and in particular, having that creative problem solving. As John Romero shared, coding is just logic-based creativity. So having that creative-based problem solving is actually more key than just being a good problem solver. And that's because they are constantly looking outside the box, looking for unique and different solutions. And sometimes it's about breaking the computer. And so usually a rite of passage for a programmer or developer, and it comes from those creative problem solvings, really going pretty deep to find a solution, even if it breaks everything. And that's kind of one of those really awesome things. And we've seen plenty of examples of creative problem solving. If you see the images here, like bringing a 20-foot gorilla onto the stage that functioned as a living, breathing character in Broadway's King Kong, or going all the way into Pixar in the original development of bringing programming and development into animation, which is something that Pixar has actually been made famous for. And so these are just some of the top transferable skills from the entertainment industry. So I would love to invite everyone to turn on your cameras, because I am very interested to have you all look at this list of transferable skills from the entertainment industry. And I want you to take stock of the ones that you feel like actually are ones that you possess, or feel like, yeah, I totally relate to that. And what I want you to do is, when you feel comfortable, is to turn on your video and just show with fingers, how many of these skills do you feel like you possess currently right now as a member of the entertainment industry or as an artist yourself? So by show of fingers, how many of these transferable skills do you feel like you have? Awesome, we got some 10s up there. We're seeing some 10s. I tricked all of you because there's 12 things on here. And so if you have 12 fingers, kudos to you. Let's see, we got some 7s, we got some 8s. We have some confused waving hands back and forth. I like that. Excellent. Awesome. So the cool thing is, if you have just anywhere from 3 to 5 of these skills, I definitely recommend potentially checking out coding and programming. And so just having 3 of these skills really puts you in a far better place than even other people coming from other industries of transferring into and learning coding skills. And part of that is because when we're actually looking at assessing what skills are actually needed for web development. So I kind of picked out 5 that I want to talk to you guys about really quickly that kind of map to some of the skills that I just shared with you right there. So as I mentioned, the number one thing is being a problem solver, but also an initiative taker. It's really important to be resourceful when you're a web developer. You need to be able to find solutions. You need to be able to find them on your own, but you also need to be able to work and collaborate with others in order to make that happen. You also need to be someone that once you solve a problem, you are like super pumped, super excited. I think some of my favorite things being an actor is when you finally figure it out. Like when you can't figure out a scene, you and the director going back and forth, and it's just like painstaking process. And then one day it all just clicks. And it's one of the most gratifying feelings in the world. This is the same thing for a coder or developer. When they're working on a challenge or a problem and they finally figure it out, there is that celebration that happens and the desire to keep digging in. And so if you're someone who really feels like you're good at problem solving, you like solving problems, and you love taking initiative, particularly for yourself, then web development definitely could be right for you. Now, the other thing is persistence and determination. As I mentioned, solving problems is a big piece of web development. What I will say is that it definitely takes time and focus, and someone who isn't interested in necessarily completely giving up. And so I always say, if you're someone who only likes to work for 20 minutes and then gives up, web development may not be for you. But for those of us in the entertainment industry, we know what it takes to be persistent and to be determined. And so that's something that definitely kind of maps really well to the entertainment industry in particular. Now, the other one is actually pretty interesting. You have to have the ability to apply concentrated and focused thinking. Now, this is not all the time, but coding and programming sometimes really does take very focused or concentrated thinking. I like to think of my mind or my brain as a muscle. So it's going to continue to get better and more efficient over time, but it's going to require some concentrated and focused thinking to do. I like to think of it as it takes a lot of concentration to recite lines or a monologue. It takes a ton of concentration to get through tech rehearsals, to light everything perfectly. And it takes a lot of centered and focused concentration to edit film together and to provide some beautiful cinematography. Chrissy, that was for you, because I'm not going to say that word. There is a verb form of cinematography. You all can go look it up because it's really uncomfortable to say, so I'm not going to say it live. But all of these things can easily be applied to learning code. Now, one of the other things that's really important to determine if web development could be a right avenue for you is to be someone who's definitely open to what I call a spectrum of solutions. In coding and programming, there typically is never a right solution or a single solution. There's actually oftentimes many different solutions to the same problem or many different pathways to get to the same answer or solution. And so having that openness to that there are a lot of different ways, I think, is a really important piece to have to be a really strong student for web development in particular. And as Rob Berkey shared, in reality, programming is more like writing poems or short stories. There's an aesthetic and beauty that can be seen in your code, and sometimes it is only recognizable by you and your cohort mates. I have to say that sometimes when I go in and look at code and students are super excited to share it with me, and I do this, I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome. But they are so thrilled about it. So sometimes the art is in the eye of the beholder, which oftentimes is the individual programmer. And so oftentimes that works really, really well with those coming from the entertainment industry. And then the last thing is a constant curiosity and desire to learn. Now, as I mentioned, being a lifelong learner is super important for coders and developers, but more importantly, I always say to really ask yourself is if programming truly interests you. I would say that this really applies to anything that you're actually interested in pursuing. You shouldn't really pursue acting if you don't really like acting, or you shouldn't pursue music because you hate singing in front of people. It's something that really you should have an interest in. And so I want to give you a few resources of how you can kind of start to get your feet wet and really understand a little bit more about how you can really test out for yourself if web development is right for you. So to start out, there are two really great free resources online that we always recommend to anyone who's interested in our programs. Freecodecamp.org is the number one. They have a lot of really great tutorials. They kind of get your feet wet, mostly focusing on some very basic programming skills, but this is a good place to go to see if this is even something that interests you. So you may have seen earlier on that you have really good skill sets that match, but until you kind of get your hands on code, that's really when you'll kind of start to figure out if there's this curiosity for learning. Code Academy is another really great free website. They have a free version and a paid version. I am an advocate for free, so I recommend checking out their free version as a good place to test out programming if you've never done it ever before. And oftentimes on freecodecamp.org and codeacademy.com, they'll kind of share some opportunities for how you can kind of actually build out to like a mini project or some sort of product so that you can kind of have that feeling of having that finished product, which is kind of cool. In addition, at Learn Academy, we have a lot of different ways to involve or to become involved and kind of to test out your interest in being a coder or a programmer. We have some really great free meetups. In particular, we have two awesome ones. One is called Build Your First Website. We just had this actually over the weekend. And then we have this really fun one called WTF is Coding. This is for someone who really wants to just get like a full understanding of what coding and programming really is about. And so this does a really good job of kind of breaking down the fundamentals as well. And these are free to attend. And so all of you guys signed up for this event on Meetup. And so I strongly encourage you all check out our Meetup link because there's some really great resources, free resources for you there, as well as some additional events that we have. We also have a really awesome weekend of coding. And so if you've kind of gotten your feet wet and you're still kind of very interested, but you want to kind of just dip your toe in, we have this really awesome weekend called Jumpstart. And so it's a full weekend of coding, starts on Friday evening and goes through about Sunday afternoon. And it's a really good opportunity. You actually get the opportunity to build a full-scale web application from scratch over one weekend and really test out for yourself if this is something that is right for you, which is a really awesome opportunity. And for all of you on the call today, we have a really awesome 50% discount code. So if you guys take this down or take a picture of the screen, Learn at Home, all capitals. If you type that in, you'll get a 50% discount for that weekend. And again, it's a really great opportunity to learn some of the basic HTML, CSS, a little bit of JavaScript, and also build out a full web application from scratch. Super fun. Now, in addition, as I mentioned before, we also are a full-time boot camp. And so we are a 16-week boot camp. I will say that our upcoming one actually fits perfectly into where the entertainment industry is most likely to be closed. So it could be a really great opportunity if you're interested to get a little bit more formal training. Many people who have tried to self-learn coding have said that if you really want to get serious, check out a boot camp because we do a really good job of accelerating your learning, but also making sure that you're learning the right things, helping to hold an accountable schedule and those types of things as well. And so it's a really good opportunity to really dive in and gain some really great skills. The other awesome thing is we have a guaranteed internship opportunity as a part of our boot camp. So the last 4 weeks of your boot camp, you're placed in a local San Diego tech company where you actually get to try out your skills and continue to learn. And this is one of the best opportunities to really start to establish some relationships in the industry and potentially connect to a future job opportunity or freelance or contract work. And I would say roughly about 1/3 of our students will get contract work of some kind or a full-time hire directly from their internship, which is kind of really exciting. That's not necessarily the intention of the program. It's just one of those amazing benefits. And in addition, we have a lot of different scholarships that are available. Particularly, we have some for women in code. We have a college degree one. as well as those who are in an underrepresented group in the tech industry as well. And so I highly recommend you check us out at learnacademy.org for more information. Now, with that, now that we kind of know the process of how, I'm really excited to invite some of our coding artists to share some of their stories with all of you. And so I'm really excited to introduce you to the following. So on the call with us today, we have George Wheeler. He is a senior web developer at a company called Notch 8, which is based in downtown San Diego. And he is also a sound engineer. For any of you who are San Diego based, if you ever saw a mixtape with me in it, I apologize, but George was the reason that I sounded really great. And so George, we're really excited to have you on the call. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Excellent. We also have Chrissy Akau on the call. She's a junior web developer and is actually currently in her internship going through our bootcamp. She is a digital media producer and cinematographer, director of photography, as she corrected me earlier. We're really excited to have Chrissy on the call as well. Hi, Chrissy.
Hello, Brian and people.
Yeah. And then last we have Adam Cuppy, who is the co-founder and, as he states, the process evangelist at a great company that's actually based in Portland called Zeal, but works down here. And he is also a professional actor who has worked at local theaters such as Diversionary Theater. And he, in particular, got his BFA in theater, so he started his schooling there. Hi, Adam. Welcome to the call.
Well, hi.
Cool. So I have a question for all of you, and I'll kind of call out to who I want to go first. But I would love for you to just quickly introduce yourself and tell us how you got into coding from the arts. And Adam, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. What was your journey into becoming a programmer?
Like you said, I actually started as my degree is in theater, and so I got a BFA from Southern Oregon University in theater, and then I had worked at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival for a very short amount of time. And while I was there, I was meeting a lot of veteran actors, and the sentiment I heard time and time again was, you're probably going to be moving and living somewhere else every 3 to 6 months. So that was not the most attractive idea for me. And so instead of being drawn to that, I was like, okay, so I need to have some sort of backup because I love acting a lot, but I don't want to feel like I have to do a particular show just to make a living. So I actually went into marketing. Funny thing, marketing and acting, very similar, very transferable skill. So I was in marketing for a while, and I was a creative director for a company based in the Northwest. And then over time, I wanted to take what I was learning there as a creative director and put it into other things. So I started my first business, did that for a while. And while we were doing more marketing and advertising related things, we were getting more and more requests for websites that did more stuff, that gave people the opportunity to log in and maybe get some information that was specific to them. And so that was the boundary between, let's say, like a standard WordPress website that's just more like a glorified business card, into something that had some interactivity and was fun and engaging to use. Sure. And which caused us to have to write more code. Now, the first line of code I'd ever written, which was the most exciting moment in my, one of the most exciting, maybe the most exciting moment in my professional life, was I was a resort manager for a really small, 10-room little cottagey resort place in Southern Oregon. And we had this website, and this was early 2000, and we would have this phone number that people would call into. Well, there was only one person that would man the desk and answer emails. And the phones. So if you were manning the desk and checking people in, you couldn't also answer phone calls. And many of the phone calls were simple, I could get back to you sort of stuff. So I had this idea. I was like, oh, well, maybe I could put a contact form, like email address, like your message, into the website. Now we're getting tricky, right? Yes, business value. So I went online. I had no idea what to look for at all. I had no clue. I was looking for like email contact form and nothing. I didn't even know what languages. I had no idea of programming languages. I kind of knew of HTML, and that was about it. So I found this one post online after I tried a bunch of things out, and I couldn't understand any of the code, but there was a chunk in there that said phone and a chunk that said email and a chunk that said message. And I was like, okay, I think I'm onto something. So I copied it, made a couple of basic adjustments, uh, posted it on the website, and the damn thing showed up. I was like the form showed up. I was like, this is incredible. Like I didn't get any error messages. I didn't get any nothing. The thing showed up. And I was like, okay, well, now's the time, right? This is the moment when all things are going to either be my inevitable future or not. So I put in my name, phone number, email address, the whole show. And I hit submit, and at first, nothing really happened. I was like, okay. And then, boom, the pop-up came up from Outlook. I had got the email. It had sent it to me, and I was hooked. Like I was like, this is the end of all things. Like I could do I could do this. I could write programs and do all that. So Jettison many years later, when we were starting to do more websites that had more stuff in them, I could go back to that time when we could build something with some interactivity. And so from there, the rest is about a decade later of writing code, not as much every day now, but having a company that does very much so. And
awesome.
so here we are, from actor to not an actor. Well, I guess an actor plus code.
Plus code. Yes.
Plus code.
I like that. That's awesome. Chrissy, how about you share a little bit about your story? Chrissy, most recently, before coming to Learn, was the director of photography for a few episodes of Westworld on HBO, for those of you who watch the show, and has brought such an awesome light and energy to our cohort. But how about you? What made you want to get into coding from where you were? I think you're on mute.
Cool. All right. Sorry about that. So I'm actually based in LA, and I went to Loyola Marymount University, graduated in 2010, and I took my first coding class in college as like a what do you call it? When a requirement, one of those required classes. And in 2012, I was like, I want to build myself a website, which Brian mentioned is a great way to kind of get your feet wet with coding in general. And I had so much fun researching and learning how to do it. And that was back before, like it was HTML, CSS, not even JavaScript. I mean, it's pretty basic, but I had so much fun doing that. And I always continued to kind of self-teach myself. But then every time I'd want to do a boot camp, I booked something or something happened where I'd be like, okay, cool. I guess I have to put this off because it's kind of a big commitment. And then it was happenstance that Corona happened, and that gave me enough time to actually do boot camp. And I actually learned about Learn through Instagram, which is crazy. And then I also kind of got more serious about considering doing a boot camp because I started volunteering with elderly people and their technology. So to teach people how to use like their cell phones and computers.
Cool.
That are about my mother's age, and that could be really frustrating, but it was very fun, and it kind of made me realize like the importance of technology and accessibility and everything. So
nice.
That's my journey.
That's awesome. Yeah, and Chrissy took advantage. Learn is now completely remote during coronavirus, and so we were really excited that Chrissy was able to join us, even being from LA, because all of our boot camp has moved to a remote setting versus in person, which has been really awesome. And George, why don't you share a little bit about your experience getting into coding?
There we go. All
there
right.
we go.
So I've been a software developer professionally for the last, I'm getting old now. It's like 12 or 13 years. When I first got out of high school, I actually wanted to study music, and a lot of what I wanted to do was either session work or studio recording or live audio engineering. It was absolutely one of the things that I loved. But from a very early age, I was always interested in computers, especially when I was able to kind of get my own, because my parents didn't get a computer in the house until, gosh, I was like a sophomore in high school or something. Like, they were so late to the game there. So I made up for lost time, mostly by modding a few games or changing some scripting and whatnot. So I went through high school, went through college, and was studying music, and realized very quickly that even the industry that I thought was maybe a little more stable, not quite just the, playing gigs at night sort of thing, was like an audio engineer working in a studio. And so I started talking to people, and I realized they never left the studio. Not only did they never leave the studio, they kind of sometimes smelled like they never left the studio. And I was noticing really quickly that everyone, though they loved it, it was hard to do other life things sometimes. And that there were some sacrifices being made there. And so from there, I kind of shifted gears. And as I was still learning music, started to teach myself coding. Back then, I don't think there were all the boot camps and all the everything. Like, your way of learning to code was some old guy telling you to just go read the documentation or go read the code. So fast forward a little bit, I kind of decided at that point, well, I'm going to shift my major. I had already been working professionally as a developer for about a year and a half, 2 years, and started transitioning my major into computer science. Fast forward a few more years, I realized that I got this far from my bachelor's, and it was going to be like another 3 semesters before I was able to take the next required course in order to graduate. And at that point, I was already making more than I knew I ever possibly could in the next decade doing audio engineering. So kind of said, okay, I'm going to just dive full into software development. And at first it felt like a little bit of a like, oh, well, you're kind of giving up on that. And I'm not doing music every day or doing the same sort of thing. But the trade-off is that as an audio engineer, I've been able to sort of build like a little home studio and have people come in and record and have some fun with that. Occasionally I get to do really awesome things like work with Brian and run really fun dynamic shows. And it's a lot of fun. So for me, it wasn't so much I'm giving one thing up to do another. It was, hey, I really love this and I really love this other thing. And so it wasn't really giving one up. It was just choosing another thing that I loved so that I could do more with it. Fast forward a few more years, and software developer now for the last 12 or 13 years, and would not go back and change a thing for sure.
That's awesome. Now, a couple of you guys have already talked a little bit about it, but what would you all say is the number one thing that you guys pulled from your careers in the entertainment industry that transferred best into being a developer? George, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Thank you. I would say that the grit and determination and persistence to get something right is probably one of the biggest things. Brian, like you'd mentioned before, if you can only focus on a thing and like try at it for about 20 minutes at a time, maybe software is not the best place for you to jump in. you know, in doing sound engineering, I can't tell you how many hours I sat behind a computer, behind a mixing board with an artist doing take after take after take after take, or show after show, right? And that desire to, you know, maybe recognize that you're never going to necessarily hit perfection, but to always ask yourself the question, okay, but what can I do better for next time, or where can I improve that, has probably been one of the most transferable skills for me.
Nice. That's awesome. Adam, what about you? What's the number one transferable skill that you took from being an actor to being a developer?
Yeah, presenting in front of other people. There's no doubt, like the comfort level in front of others is easily one of the greatest assets I've ever been able to transfer across.
But Adam, don't developers and coders just sit in a basement in the dark all the time and not talk to people?
Totally. Yeah, if you're not willing to sit in total darkness for years, then or in space like George, unless you can sit in space forever, it's, you know, I don't know if this is going to be for you.
I know. It's one of those interesting things that I think is a myth about developing and coding, is that how collaborative it is. And a lot of people don't see that aspect necessarily of it, especially actually depicted by the entertainment industry, interestingly enough. And if anyone watches Zoe's playlist, coding zeal is like that every single day. They just like break into song and dance while they're coding. So
we only employ triple threats at Zeal. Only.
That's awesome.
That's it. That's what you have to do, is you have to be able to sing, dance. And speaking of which, Brian, I know you enjoy your career path, but I think I've got a place for you.
Perfect. I'll be your administrative assistant.
Great.
Chrissy, what about you? What's probably the biggest transferable skill that you've taken from your previous career?
Oh man, I love that triple threat comment. That's hilarious. I think what George said was really great with the grit. It's super important in coding, and I think one huge thing I've taken with me is to be adaptable and flexible, because I've noticed a lot of you are production managers or do something with live shows, and you know, I always have a theory that like whenever I'm filming, I'm like, everything's going too well right now. Something's gonna happen. You know it. You're like, we're on schedule. Everything's going right. You know something's gonna happen where it's just gonna derail everything. And so the ability to, when that thing happens, to be like, okay, let's come back and think about how we can shoot this differently, or how we can salvage a shot, or how we can rearrange the story so that it still fits in together, is something that's super important. And also the love of learning, which I think Brian hit on. Technology is constantly changing, as is our industry as well. Everything, the newest cameras, the newest equipment, the newest lighting, the newest sound equipment, everything is always changing. So the ability to like and love to learn is super, super, super important. And that is very transferable as well.
Nice. And then my last question for you guys before we open it for Q&A is, I would like you, in one sentence, what is your piece of advice that you have for someone who's just getting started? Maybe you can tell them where to get started, how, like first thing to do, all those types of things. But what advice would you give to someone who's just getting started? Chrissy, I'm going to start with you.
Cool. Practice, 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 and patience with yourself. I think not giving Sarah, one of the instructors, always said that, like, just day one, be patient with yourself. And like George said, you're all gonna have that like grit and that want to like keep doing it, which is great, but at the same time, you're learning something new. So just being able to be patient and practice. That's the only way you're gonna get better, like actually getting your hands dirty. And it's kind of, and showing off what you've done too. I know for me, like sometimes the projects I work on, I'm like, oh, I don't want anyone to see it. But with code, it's kind of cool because you're like, this is what I did. And yeah, I feel proud about it, so.
Nice. That's awesome. George, what about you? What's your one piece of advice for someone who's just getting started with code?
It's a marathon, not a sprint. Pace yourself. Recognize that there is no possible way to absorb all of that information overnight. I tried. It doesn't work. And there's the other side of that is that as has been mentioned so far, the industry is always changing and evolving. And while that is definitely true, many of the core concepts haven't changed since the computer science of like the 60s and 70s. So it's a sprint, not a marathon. And in that, in trying to sort of maximize like your learning and your understanding, really, really try and learn the concepts. The syntactic details are important because if you miss a semicolon, the whole thing doesn't work. But learning those concepts will really, really help you move it from one language or framework to another.
Awesome. Adam, what do you say? What's your number one piece of advice for someone who's just getting started?
Yeah, I think what Chrissy and George said is awesome. I don't know that I have anything more poignant than that. Maybe I'll say from this vantage point, which is what I've observed in a lot of folks that end up frustrated and may abandon ship after, giving it a go for a month, is the most common thing is they fall prey to one core belief that some people just aren't made for it. I don't believe that to be true. I think that this isn't something that is anything that somebody's like predestined for or predisposed to be great at or good at, or at the very least have a career in. I think it's something you can learn, just like you would learn, to speak a language, any language, the one you may only speak one now and just be able to speak that one. And if we've learned anything about learning models, the most impactful learning model is total immersion. So diving in head first, being willing to be very confused is essential. There's a mantra that I have, or we'll say it's kind of started as this realization, which is most of us have the natural human need to find certainty. We want to know that the world around us, right now, you're probably not feeling a lot of this certainty, but generally speaking, our emotions and our stress comes from this place where we are feeling uncertain, that we just don't know what to do, don't know where to go, that things aren't predictable, we don't know what tomorrow will bring. And at the same time we're also drawn to grow. We're drawn to be better, we're drawn to evolve. I think as human beings, this is our nature. As a species, this is our nature. But there's a paradoxical irony, and that is you cannot grow into something you already know. So certainty and growth cannot coexist. You have to be, if you're going to grow, you have to be in a state of uncertainty just by pure definition. So if you are trying to be better at something, but expecting yourself to know it already, then you can't possibly grow. You can't possibly, they're antithetical. They just do not coexist. So it really is essential that you go all in, that you not only take the risk, but acknowledge, recognize, take George's advice, take Chrissy's advice, that you're not gonna know. That's kind of the point of learning something new. And the last thing I will remind you all of is if you want a salary of $70,000, $80,000, or $90,000, it's gonna be for those that put in the effort, the time, and the energy. That's all. It's not for, if it was available to everybody that put in a week or two of effort, it wouldn't be worth it. Everyone would do that, but not everyone does. And so it's not that you have to put in 2 years before you can produce anything meaningful. It's not that at all. But it does mean that it does take effort. And those that persevere past that point of frustration and choose to just continue to push on and continue to grow as they're uncertain in that growth, those are the individuals. And again, it's for everybody, you, whoever is listening, it's for anybody to get there. And it's how I got there. I think it's probably how George got there, probably how Brian got there. It's how we all got there. And I will leave you with one last thing, and that is, because why not? I got the mic on right now, and that is, we all started in the same place. Not a single person on the planet was born with the ability to do any of this. So, at some point in time, even the most prolific programmers in the world, in the past, today, and in the future, all of us started from this exact moment where we knew nothing. The real question is, and what do you do now?
That's awesome. Well, George, Chrissy, and Adam, thank you all so much for hopping on. I just want to give quick credits. If you guys are looking for a really amazing place to go for photos or for presentations, Slide Carnival and Unsplash are unprecedented. I love them so much, so I just want to give them some credit. And here is my contact information if you all have questions. I want to respect people's times. I know that we're slightly over the 1 hour mark, but I want to open it open for questions. So for those of you who would like to take off, feel free. For those who want to stick around and ask some questions, please feel free. And we're happy to do that. And thank you all so much for coming on today.
You can either put your questions in the chat or you could also unmute yourself.
What's your favorite thing about coding?
The money. I'll be real. I make a great living doing this. I have incredible freedom, and so far I've been pretty recession proof. So yeah, the money.
I
would.
Oh, go for it, Brian. Go for it.
No, you go, George. Go for it.
I'm a tinker at heart. I like playing with things, building things, and poking at things and seeing how they work. And I get paid to do that. And to me, there is nothing more satisfying than dealing with the frustration of trying to figure out a problem, getting to the end, it works, being able to step back and watch it be deployed to a server and not have to touch it again for a little while. That's incredibly fulfilling.
That's awesome.
I think for me, there's something kind of zen about it. I don't know, sometimes like film stuff just stresses me out, like trying to plan stuff, and there's something about coding, like I get frustrated, but it's like I find it more relaxing than anything, and I think it's part of the problem solving aspect of it that's a little bit different than film. So I enjoy it because of that.
That's awesome. I mean, I always love the end products that our students do, because I think I keep getting more and more impressed with what our instructors can get them to do, because it's really awesome. Especially, we do these really cool group projects at the end where people create something from idea and concept all the way to deployment, which means like putting it into production in just 2 weeks. And the amount of creativity that goes into that is pretty spectacular. And it's really fun to see people nerd out about, like, my favorite is we had a student, her name is Gina. She's actually giving a talk on one of our meetups on Friday. And I asked her how things went at her internship that day. And she goes, "Brian, I spent 6 hours, but I finally got the box to be the exact color yellow that I wanted the box to be. And you don't know how excited I am that it is a yellow box." And I literally just was like, that's awesome that you're so excited. We just had another student, her name is April, who was finally figured out how to create like a login form so that everything was consistent. And it was something that was actually undocumented, and she finally figured it out. And so we told her, we were like, you need to put this on the internet, because there are developers who have been doing this for 10, 15 years who don't know how to do that, and you figured it out. And so it was really awesome to kind of see some of those things. So it's really cool to see people that even are just getting started creating these amazing things just through excitement and passion. So that's pretty awesome.
I'll throw one more thing out if I could,
of course,
related to that, which is this is what entire populaces of people are being impacted by, positively, of course, and a little negatively too. The power, this wand that we have with software is incredible. It's changing the way the planet thinks in very good ways and some not great ways, but some really powerful ways. And so the ability to have incredible positive influence is so cool. So cool. some of the projects our company has worked on have been just like so gratifying. Like the gratification of seeing that come to be and the people it's impacted positively has been just astoundingly fun and cool.
That's awesome. TJ, were there any questions that I missed at the beginning?
What kind of not software, but well, I mean maybe like, do you have to have a certain setup to do it?
That's a great question, Heather. So we at Learn, as a part of our program, we actually help set up, so it's called setting up your environment. And a lot of people have preferences on coding, whether it's through Mac or on a PC, and you can do it on both and set up the right environment for it. So to kind of get started, the things that you would want to look for is so there are two softwares that you can download. One is called Atom, ATOM, that can allow for you to actually create code and write code in. The other is called VS Code. VS Code has a little bit more like bells and whistles, will help kind of do some of the work for you. So a lot of people like that, especially when they're getting started. So those are the softwares that you would need to download, but they function on both Mac and or PC. And then to actually like go and build out a website, you actually use your terminal, which all computers have. So you actually just kind of log in through the server and you're able to kind of connect things from there. And so that's kind of how to get started. And then Sarah, if you want to speak to, there are some other, like depending on the programming languages you're going to be using, sometimes there are specific environments you want set up. So Sarah, I don't know if you want to answer that question really quickly.
For sure. Every language that you're interested in writing, requires something slightly different. Some of the more universal ones can be done from anywhere, and some of the more specific languages just work better on certain machines and in certain environments. There's just a series of downloading different software to your computer in order to get your specific environment based on your languages that you're creating. And that goes all the way to a very complicated setup that you would use in an environment in order, George could probably speak to this and Adam better of creating containerization where you're even though you're on your machine, you're actually working from a space that is outside of that, and it becomes very complicated. But at Learn, we do kind of a medium low complexity version of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One thing there is that I think there is this idea sometimes that you need a big, fast machine in order to do development. That is not true at all. You need a big, fast machine to run things in production sometimes, right? But you're typically not the one paying for that or doing that. I have been, as just a fun little aside, I have been playing with, well, I'll pull one of these out instead because the other one's hooked up, but playing around with, if I can show this, doing fun little development bits on this, which is just a Raspberry Pi. It's a $50 machine, and the amount of development that you can do on this is amazing. It's incredible what you can get out of it. Other machines will, make it a little bit easier, a little bit more portable, a little more this or that. And there are always the little caveats of like, well, if you're going to develop Windows apps, maybe you'd get a Windows machine. Or if you're going to develop mobile apps, you might need a Mac to do some of the iOS stuff. But ultimately, there is not the barrier to entry there that people might think it is.
And the nice thing that we do at Learn too is, especially because we're remote right now, we actually will provide you with the computer set up with the correct environment if you attend our boot camp. And so that's really great. And then the instructors for Jumpstart will do a good job of, as Sarah mentioned, there are certain things that don't necessarily require a whole lot of setup. And so Jumpstart functions off of that, knowing that people are not going to have these elaborate environments set up. And that's because when we're in person as a boot camp, we provide computers as well. And so even though we're remote, we still provide computers and the setup and those types of things.
Great. I was mainly asking because I'm a Mac girl, and most of my friends that are into computers, they have such disdain for them. So I was making sure that an Apple can actually be used to do something like this.
We're a Mac-based organization, so yes.
The language, the backend language that we use is much more friendly with Macs, and so that's the computer software that we use for Learn. I'm the same. I'm a Mac all the way through, so that works out well for me.
Great, thank you all.
Yeah. Awesome. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Hey guys,
Hi, Vivian.
Vivian here. I just wanted to let you know I'm not in the art industry. Can you see me? Anyway, can you hear me well?
We can hear you perfectly. Yeah.
Okay. I've been doing hair for 17 years, and during quarantine, I was looking for something beside doing hair. And actually, even before quarantine, I wanted to do something else. And so I started selling on Amazon as a third party, and that was not my thing. And then my husband, actually, he's a network engineer. And he told me, why don't you look into Python? It'll keep you busy. So it was so crazy. Like, in a million years, I would have never imagined myself doing anything like this. And I started it's very basic on YouTube, those free YouTube channels that show. It was amazing. It's actually so creative and so artistic in the most random way. So I fell in love with it, and I'm so excited to start with Learn. I just signed up today for the boot camp. I'm so happy. So I just wanted to let you know I'm probably going to be here for every meetup.
Amazing.
Just so
That's
that way
great.
I can get more information as much as I can, and just get more comfortable with the Zoom and all the meetups. So yeah, I'm very excited. So
That's awesome.
thank
Yeah,
you.
we had an alumni 2 cohorts ago who was a barber for a long time, and he just made the transition. He's doing a really awesome 3-month paid internship after his internship with Learn at a local company that we helped set him up with, which is really awesome. And he's loving it. And in my opinion, in the theater, hairstylists and wig creators are way more creative than anyone. They make us transform into crazy people. So you are for sure an artist, Vivian. Trust me.
Thank you. Well, a lot of things you were saying, I could totally relate.
Yep.
You know, so many things. So yeah, it's very exciting.
That's awesome. Cool. Great. Any other questions? Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for hanging out with us tonight. As I mentioned, my contact information is right there. Please check us out at learnacademy.org. We are absolutely happy to answer any questions or just get you started on the right path. That's kind of our big thing. We just want to get people started. And then if you're interested in a more formal setting, Learn is a really good option because of all of the kind of success practices we have built in, including our internships, our career services. So we do individualized career services as well, which is really great and really kind of help to shape that for people. So thank you all. Have a wonderful evening and a wonderful rest of your week.